Hi, Rabbi Skolnik here. I am delighted to be back with you after a week of vacation, talking about Parashat HaShavua. And it seems like a perfectly appropriate time to re-enter because of the fact that we're starting a new book of the Torah. Last week we completed the reading of Sefer Breshit, the book of Genesis, and this week we move on to the book of Shemot. And Parashat Shemot, the first portion in the book that goes by that name. Parashat Shemot takes us to an entirely different period of our history, where the story of the Torah is no longer the story of a family, but rather the story of a nation. We're not talking about one clan anymore. It's not about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, and their children. It's about Bnei Yisrael, about the children of Israel as an aggregate, as a collective. And this is going to be the unfolding story of the history of our people. Parashat Shemot introduces us, of course, to Moses, who will be the central character of the Torah for the remaining 4 books. He is the only character who really lasts that long on the stage of all of the characters in the Torah. Moshe is with us the longest. We have the longest history with him, literally from infancy until death, with virtually so much of his life in between, even though we're missing some of the early years when he's in the Pharaoh's court. What I'd like to suggest to you to think about this week in terms of this particular Torah portion is how Parashat Shemot sets the stage for the story that will unfold in the coming weeks, but even more than that, how it is a story of ordinary people acting in rather extraordinary ways. We have in secular culture images of heroes or people acting heroically that oftentimes makes them seem larger than life. We do it routinely to athletes who, because they can jump higher or dunk a ball in a way that none of us mortals can, we assume that they have qualities of personality and character which we discover all too painfully they often don't. But what I think Parashat Shemot shows us in a remarkable way is the fact that it's not really extraordinary people who are the story of Shemot and of the Exodus, but it is rather ordinary people who act in a way that goes beyond the ordinary in order to advance the story. The first example is Shifra and Puah, the 2 Egyptian birth nurses, if you will, who defy Pharaoh for whatever reason. And instead of killing off the male children of the Israelites, like Pharaoh decrees, they give them life. They save them. And according to rabbinic tradition, not only do they not kill them, but they also get food and water for them. They feed their families. And it's their courage that keeps the story going, because if it wasn't for their courage, the story would have ended in Parashat Shemot. So they're the first heroes. I think it's also true that the daughter of Pharaoh is a heroine in this story. She lives in the most exalted situation that we could imagine, and yet she somehow finds herself stirred to compassion when she sees this baby floating in the Nile. She must realize that it's a Hebrew child, and she saves the baby, and she brings the baby into the palace and raises him as her son. Of course, that baby being Moshe. And then last but most certainly not least, and arguably the most of all, there is Moses himself, who repeatedly in this story shows that not only is he not a heroic figure in the Greek sense or in any literary sense, but actually he is reticent to a fault according to tradition and the Torah. He's a stutterer for reasons that the Midrash expounds on, but he really doesn't want the mission. He's the true prophet in the Jewish sense. All of our classical prophets were reluctant to take upon themselves the mission that God charged them with. And Moshe says to God repeatedly, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" And God pushes him, and ultimately Moshe allows himself to be swayed and finds in himself a grandeur and a courage that he had no way of knowing could possibly be there. He goes beyond his comfort zone. And he does it when he comes out of the palace and sees the Egyptians slaying the Israelite. It's an unnatural thing for a child of privilege to be moved to kill one of the enforcers of his privileges. It's an unnatural thing for Moshe, who is chvad peh uchvad lashon. He is a stutterer, to be able to go and stand in front of the most powerful man in the world at that time and say, "Let my people go." All of these characters are part of a tapestry of what I like to think of as ordinary people acting in extraordinary ways. That's what makes Parashat Shemot so spectacular. Shabbat Shalom.